right, I'll go ahead and call to order this meeting of the Board of Directors of the Waste Reduction District of Monroe County. Mr. Stafford, could you please call the roll?
Meeting Mr. McGlasson.
Mr. McGlasson.
It's okay, I don't care.
Sorry.
Did you call
Mr.
me?
Stafford could do it.
Stafford? Swafford.
Stafford.
Let's ask him to call the roll.
I'm kind of
All right.
that kind of deal, so.
All here say aye.
There you go. McKim. Thomas.
Here.
Piedmont Smith.
Here.
Swafford.
Here.
Githens.
Here.
Jones.
Here.
Thompson.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you very much, Mr. McGlasson. We have in the packet the Executive Committee meeting minutes from July 1st. That was just FYI for the board. Were there any questions about those? No. All right. We can move on to approval of the Board of Directors meeting minutes from June 13th. So this is a couple months ago.
I move approval. Second.
All right. Any questions or comments, corrections for these meeting minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, those meeting minutes are approved. Next, we will move on to the Controller's Report. Ms. Martin is with us via Teams, so I'll turn it over to her.
Okay, the cash, can you hear me?
Yes.
The cash flow summary is on page 7 of your board packet. The operating balance as of July 31st was $4,457,377.09. The closure bond debt was $30,383.51 at July 31st. The capital account balance at July 31st was $45,839.10. And the landfill post-closure account was $779,158.77. The individual cash flow statements for each of these are on pages 8 to 12 of your packet. The operating fund graph is on page 10. The landfill post-closure cash flow statement and an updated cash flow summary was included in the email with this week's claims because that was not available last week. The statement wasn't available to update that at that time. Questions on the account balances?
Thank you, Ms. Martin. Are there any questions from board members? Okay, yes, Mr. McGlasson.
For clarification, it included in what was emailed yesterday with the updated summary, there was also a corrected debt fund cash flow. There was an error in the formula for total revenues, actual less budget column. So we did get that error corrected and sent an updated cash flow statement out with everything yesterday as well. So.
Yes, thank you for reminding us about that. So I have just a few questions. Looking at the detailed cash flow for the operating budget and the expenses, I always like to just look at that last column and make sure the percent remaining isn't too low for the rest of the year. So I did notice in under supplies in the repair and maintenance, we're down to just 10% or 10.9% remaining. Is that a concern at all? I know we have kind of excess remaining in other lines, so I just wanted to make sure that that was not going to be a problem.
Yeah, I think, I mean, for that specific line, yes, that's a concern because we have had, I mean, some things have happened this year and we've had to make some repairs and whatnot, but I do think that in the overall picture, there's enough surplus in other lines that should any additional maintenance repair needs come up throughout the year, we can pull money from other lines to cover that and be okay.
Okay, great. Yeah, and I noticed conversely in the workers' comp line, we haven't spent anything, so that's good.
Well, our insurance renews in December of every year.
Oh, gotcha.
So the liability in the work comp lines, we don't really spend anything out of those. I think we have our cybersecurity policy is a January, February renewal, and that's the only expense you're seeing in those lines at this point.
Okay, so that's to pay for the insurance.
Yes.
So it doesn't mean we haven't had any workers' comp claims.
Well, we're not self-funded for work comp. We have work comp insurance, and we pay an annual premium on that.
Okay, all right. So claims would be submitted to that
Yes.
company. Okay. All right. And then I have just a kind of terminology question as well. When I'm looking at the bond debt cash flow revenue, the summary, it has, so under revenues, it has interest, and then it has debt service tax. Is that property tax?
It is a levy on the property, an additional levy on the property tax,
okay.
yes. Mhm.
I was just confused because in the other funds, it's labeled property tax. And
Yeah.
here it's not labeled that way, but it is a tax on properties. Okay. Any other questions on cash flows before we move on to payroll and claims? All right. Ms. Martin, if you could continue then to payrolls and claims.
On page 13 of your packet, you have a total for payroll and claims for approval since our last meeting. That's in the amount of $420,811.92. The backup for those numbers are on pages 14 to 45, everything that makes up those claims. The claims for approval this week were sent in an email on Wednesday and are in the amount of $66,974.51. And documentation for those claims was included in that Wednesday email. That brings the total of all of the payroll and claims that we are recommending for approval to $487,786.43. Questions on those claims?
Thank you, Ms. Martin. Are there any board member questions on the payroll and claims? Okay. Seeing none, is there a motion?
Move approval of payroll and claims.
Second.
Okay, and before we vote, I will ask if there's any public comment on this item. I don't see anything on Teams. Do we have any public on Teams? I don't see any raised hands, so I think we're okay. Okay. All right. All those in favor of the motion to approve payroll and claims, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right. Well, thanks to the controller. Those are approved. Next, we move on to the Waste Reduction District budget proposals for 2025, and we'll turn it over to Mr. McGlasson.
Unfortunately, with the July meeting being canceled, which normally would have been the board meeting where the board gets their first review of the budget, we did, however, have a joint meeting that had 4 board members at it with the CAC on the 18th. But given that situation, I would I offer the board the choice. I can go through the budget presentation in full, as I would normally do in July and did at that joint meeting, or we can go through it more quickly and just highlight the differences from what was presented at the joint meeting on the 18th.
What's the will of the body? Do you want the long version or the short version?
I'd vote for a condensed version with opportunity for ample questions.
That sounds reasonable. Sounds good. Let's go for that.
Okay. Yeah, and obviously, yeah, if there's any specific line that somebody has a comment or a question on, please feel free to interrupt the presentation, and we'll just address those as they come up. So. Well, if it will advance for me.
I think we've had this problem before.
Here we go. Okay. The bulk of the differences on this is a summary slide, and we'll go through, each revenue and expense category in more detail. But the bulk of the changes from what was presented on the 18th are on the revenue side, and some positives and negatives, but ultimately it results in a positive additional revenue to the tune of about $31,000 from what was presented on the 18th, and the bulk of that results from information we got with our budget workshop with DLGF earlier that morning. So on the property tax, the property taxes ultimately went up $5,008 from what you saw on the 18th. That number there is the 4% growth quotient that DLGF had put out, less the projected cap impact that DLGF provided. So the circuit breaker is built in there. The vehicle license excise tax, that's the one that went down $11,000 after we met with DLGF. And the commercial, the CVET went down about $445. So we did get a net loss in the tax revenue, but we did make that up in some other places. And on this slide, the line 00451 orange bag retailers, after getting our June financials reconciled, we did increase that by $20,000 from what was shown at the 18th. The June sales figure brought us up, and you can see in the comparison sheet that's in the packet, as well as the year-to-date budget status. As of June 30th, we were actually at about 54% of budgeted revenue for that line, a little over $140,000. So we did feel comfortable bumping that up to $280,000 for next year. Let's see, the next line, orange bag sales out of HHW came down $250. It was originally projected at $1,000, but based through 6 months of this year, I think we're at $370. So we did drop that down to $750. And on this next slide, there a corresponding $17 reduction from what you saw before for the sales tax, which is just strictly based on the projected sales out of HHW. So. No changes on the sale of recyclables revenue from what was previously presented. Here's in this slide, we have another big change. DLGF did ask us to put in the $18,600 on the revenue side, which would be the debt service fund repaying the loan from earlier this year. They did tell us to budget that way, so that's obviously what we did. And those are the changes on the revenue side. From what was presented on the 18th, and again, a little over $31,000 increase from that last presentation. So on the expenses, we start with the personnel services. What's in here is a proposed 7% wage increase for all employees across the board. You can see in the slide, that's based on the CPI, the wage earner CPI index we've historically used, as well as some other cost of living factors from data out of the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis. Those food costs, food, housing, gasoline, all at 20+%. Obviously, we can't give a 20% raise, so but we tried to do a little bit more than what the CPI index was that we thought the budget could absorb to do what we can to help our employees out with those additional expense increases. None of this has changed from what was presented on the 18th in the personnel services category. And again, you can see it's other things that, I guess the other big change that's proposed in there on this slide here is we are proposing to increase the retirement contribution from 11 to 12%. If you're unaware, our retirement plan is 100% employer funded. Employees are not allowed to contribute to this retirement plan by rule. We do have a few employees that do have their own individual IRAs that we've helped them set up through our financial advisor, but our plan is totally employer funded. For reference, the county's contribution for its employees, I think, currently sits at 14.2%. I think that's what I got from the council office. So we're still lagging a little bit behind the county, but thought we were in a position to bump it up from 11 to 12% for next year. So. Nothing changed from the 18th in the supplies category. In fact, the only change from what was presented on the 18th is, let me find that here. Oop, I got to back up. Is on the line 3690, other repair and maintenance. Reduce that by $6,750. That's a miscommunication between myself and Mr. Long. He had repair costs for AC units. We've also budgeted to replace. So we took those anticipated repair costs out, since we do have budgeted to replace those units next year, which should eliminate the need for the repair and maintenance on those. And just a couple of other, I guess, typo corrections to note in the copy of this that was presented in the packet on the line 3960 recycling fees. The $5,000 difference, I inadvertently put parentheses around. It is an increase, not a decrease. So that's been corrected on this slide here for the presentation. And I guess that is it for the operating fund. Differences, variations from what was presented on the 18th. Before we do the debt and capital, any comments or questions?
Are there any questions about the proposed operating fund budget?
I'm actually pleased to support the pay increase for the employees.
Yeah. Should we go ahead with the resolution that is linked to this, or do you want to go over all three first and then do the resolutions?
The debt and the service are the debt and the cum cap fund are pretty cut and dry. We can go through those pretty quick. So, and then hit the three resolutions in a row if that pleases the board. So, okay.
That would be fine.
Okay. The debt service, we do have some changes from what was printed on the 18th. Again, revenue related after meeting with DLGF. We did get a $7,426 increase in projected property tax revenue. $1,216 increase on the vehicle excise tax and a $459 increase on the commercial vehicle excise tax. And then again, the commercial vehicle excise tax also has the parenthesis typo on it again, identified as a negative. It is actually a positive, an increase over 2024. But that was, those increases were larger than projected. That's DLGF maximizing what they can in our tax levies on there due to that outstanding loan to the operating fund. So yes, you'll notice there's a little over a $9,000 surplus revenue over expenses projected for 2025. That with our projected end of year cash balance that would carry forward into 25 should allow for us to repay that $18,600 next year.
That's good news.
Yeah, and then the capital fund, we do this every year. It's a zero-sum budget, but DLGF always advises us to go ahead and adopt that budget so that it is on record. And then if if we have a storm that creates roof damage or something, we can just do additional appropriation out of that budget because it is on record. It eliminates some steps to access that money if we pass the zero-sum budget. So.
Are there any questions on the debt service fund or the cumulative capital fund? Seeing none, we're ready for a motion on Resolution 2024-05.
I move approval of the resolution 2024-05 for the approval of the 2025 operating fund budget.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Is there anybody in the public who would like to comment on Resolution 2024-05, which is adopting the 2025 operating fund budget? Okay, seeing none. Do we need a roll call vote?
We should do a roll call vote
Okay.
on the budget resolutions, yes.
Go ahead, please.
Swafford,
Yes.
Kithens,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Piedmont Smith.
Yes,
Motion passes.
thank you. And we'll move on to the next resolution. If we could have a motion, please.
Want me to go ahead?
Go ahead.
I move approval of Resolution 2024-06 Waste Reduction District of Monroe County, the 2025 Debt Service Fund budget.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the 2025 debt service fund budget for the district. Is there anybody in the public who would like to make a comment on this budget proposal? Don't all jump up at once. All right, Mr. McGlasson, could you please call the roll?
Kithens,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Piedmont Smith,
Yes.
Swafford.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much. And then we will move on to the cum cap fund.
Move approval of resolution 2024-07, the Waste Reduction District of Monroe County's 2025 cumulative cap fund budget.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to adopt the 2025 cumulative capital fund budget. Is there any member of the public who would like to comment on this item? All right, Mr. McGlasson, could you please call the roll?
Jones,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Piedmont Smith,
Yes.
Swafford,
Yes.
Githens.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, very good. I believe that concludes our budget resolutions. Then we can move on to a resolution to amend Resolution 2023-19, an ordinance for fixing salaries for 2024. Mr. McGlasson, if you'd like to explain this one.
Yeah. So as you can see in the memo on page 86 of the packet, I hope at this point we're all aware, Ms. Martin unfortunately has announced that she is going to be retiring in October. And so we've begun pursuing candidates, for the controller position. In discussions with the executive committee and staff did have a desire to bring that new person on before Ms. Martin does actually retire, to give 2 to 3 weeks of some overlap for training purposes and acclimation. So in order to do that, we don't have an open position in the ordinance in order to pay that person. So working with the county council office and legal counsel, the suggestion or the solution provided, was to amend the salary ordinance to add a temporary training position. So what we've done here is add basically a generic training position so that it's something we can keep on the ordinance for any future needs that we may have in similar situations. So it's not specific to any position or department. And you can note in the resolution that, the wage is assigned based on the position that they're training for. So And that's, legal counsel has reviewed and provided that wording and said this is the way to address this and allow us to have that overlap for training purposes when we need it.
Thank you. Are there any questions about this proposal before we make a motion? I will just ask, for this particular training that we have in mind for the new controller, do we have sufficient funds in the budget to cover the costs as far as you can predict?
I believe that we will. I will refer back to, at least with the executive committee, I know we've had some discussions, regarding the rebranding costs we incurred at the beginning of the year that we did not encumber funds for, because at the time we were doing the budget, we had hoped to have rebranding pretty much done before the end of the year. So we did not encumber money for signage and advertising, and those are expenses that we've had to incur. And we are probably going to have to, at some point this year, ask the board to move money between categories to balance some of our budget lines. But I do believe that, at least in the personnel services category, there will be enough excess funds in other lines to cover basically paying 2 controllers for a 2 to 3 week period.
Okay, very good. I think we're ready for a motion then.
Move approval of Resolution 2024-08, the Waste Reduction District of Monroe County, amending Resolution 2023-19, the ordinance which fixed salaries for the calendar year 2024.
Is there, okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there anybody in the public who would like to comment on this resolution? All right, seeing none, Mr. McGlasson, could you please call the roll on Resolution 2024-08?
Thompson,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Piedmont Smith,
Yes.
Swafford,
Yes.
Githens,
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. I think this will be helpful as the new person comes on board, and we are sad to see Ms. Martin go, but we'll be glad she'll be able to train somebody new, hopefully. Related to this, our next agenda item is the controller position. Mr. McGlasson, would you like to give us an update?
Ms. Martin's official last day is scheduled to be October the 11th. And in the discussions with the executive committee, which generally, for sake of clarification, the controller is the board's hire. The controller reports directly to the board. Historically, the executive committee has handled vetting of candidates, interviewing candidates, and recommending a selected candidate to the board to hire for that position. Given the timing of where we are now and the board not scheduled to meet again until September the 12th, in order to ensure that once we have identified the candidate that the executive committee wishes to offer the position to, in order to ensure that that person can be offered the position and have time to give proper notice or whatever things that they need to do before they would start on our identified start date of September 23rd, would ask the board to defer that hiring decision to the executive committee so that we can get the interviews done, get an offer made if a candidate is identified, and then that could be brought back to the board at the 12th for that decision to be ratified. But in order to get the process moving in the timeline that we think is appropriate, we would need to make those decisions before the September 12th board meeting. Legal counsel has advised that this can just be, somebody can make a motion and a second today and vote on that motion. We don't need a resolution, but we do need the board to formally acknowledge, deferring that decision to the executive committee.
Thank you. Are there any questions about this process and what has been proposed?
Like a good plan.
So is there a motion preferably from somebody not on the executive committee.
I move to authorize the executive committee to proceed with screening and interviewing candidates
And make an offer
And
to.
making an
and
offer.
make an offer to be voted on for final approval by the board. Is that the correct motion?
To be ratified. I
To be ratified by the
To be
board.
ratified by
Yeah.
the board.
I'll second that.
All right. Do we need a roll call vote on that motion?
I think a verbal vote, but since we're deviating from normal procedure, we might offer public comment on that motion.
Certainly. So there's a motion on the table to authorize the executive committee to make a hiring decision on the new controller to be ratified at the next board meeting. Is there anybody in the public who would like to comment? All right. If not, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion passes. All right, I think the next item we have is a report from the CAC. So I believe we have the vice chair of the CAC approaching.
Good afternoon, board members. Joseph Winia here, Vice Chair of the Citizens Advisory Committee. As you can see, there's not an awful lot to report on. Our regular CAC meeting was held as a joint meeting with the Board of Directors, so many of you were there for that. And then we also provided our written comments for the 2025 proposed budget per Indiana State Code, which is also included in the packet. I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you, Mr. Winia. Are there any questions from board members? Okay, thank you very much.
Yes.
So then we'll move on to department reports. Mr. McGlasson, would you like to start the administration?
Sure. And for the record, since I did kind of gloss over it in the budget presentation, the written comments from the CAC are on page 49 of the packet. So they were provided to the board in the packet. I know it's been 2 months since we've met, but I don't have a whole lot, to update the board on at this point. We did share some booth space at the Monroe County Fair with the Monroe County Stormwater Program. I think that's the second year in a row that we've done that. It does seem to be a good partnership for that event. There's lots of overlap in the goals and the missions of those two organizations, and it seems to work really well for both of us. We did raffle a rain barrel at the fair. You can see in the report we had 106 entries, and I apologize, I don't recall the name, but the gentleman that won it was a Bloomington resident that works at IU. So. And he seemed very excited to win it, so that was good to see. So. Other than that, you can see we've done some, at least on social media. If you're not aware, we have started a new recycling program with a company called TerraCycle. Currently, we're only offering this at our household hazardous waste facility. I think Mr. Long may have talked about this in June, but it's to do, one program does toothpaste tubes, another one the other one that does the disposable razors. It seems to have piqued some people's interest. We are getting calls about that. We'll continue it solely at HHW to see how things go, but it is something we would hope to be able to roll out to the other sites if it goes well and there's a lot of issues or questions with how that program works. But TerraCycle provides us the containers that the materials are deposited in, and they get shipped back off to them, and empty containers sent back to us. So, Mr. Long can clarify, but I think at this point that is no cost to the district for that program. So.
Didn't it also include toothbrushes?
Yes. So, Mr. Law may remember better than I do everything that's included in the program, but it's something that we're excited to be able to offer to the community, and again, like I said, hopefully it's something that we can get fine-tuned to the point we're comfortable rolling it out to the rural sites as well.
Do you have a list of those items on the website that you accept for TerraCycle? Because TerraCycles, I've used them before for various household goods.
They have a number of different
They do,
programs.
yeah.
And the website, I'll have to double check. I know that the list of items has been posted on Twitter and our Facebook page. So it is out there, but getting it on the website so they don't have to dig through a bunch of Facebook
Right.
posts
That would be-
are a month old or 2 months old. We can certainly look at doing that, yes.
That would be really helpful. So are you doing the full gamut of the TerraCycle? So the juice pouches and all that? Or are you just limiting it to a
ask
few
Mr.
items?
Long to chime in
Okay.
on that one.
Okay,
so,
I was just curious. I think that's why it would be really helpful to have that list.
yeah.
Thank you.
So are there any questions on, are you done with the administration
Yeah,
report?
I
We
don't-
can
I don't-
ask Joey then.
Yeah, I don't really have anything else to update you on, but happy to answer any questions, so.
Okay, are there any questions about the administration report?
I think we wanted to bring up the Walmart issue.
Yes, thank you. I do, for public information, we're having some issues with Walmart corporate getting paid for the orange bags that they're ordering. So at this point, we are not delivering orange bags to Walmart until that situation is rectified with Walmart corporate. This is the second time we've had this issue. They were 5 months behind at one point, and I believe we got that caught up, and then they've not paid the next 2 invoices. So until we get that situation resolved with their accounts payable department, unfortunately, we're not going to be able to supply Walmart with orange bags.
Mr. McGlasson, how does that work? We supply them and then they reimburse?
Yeah, the store manager, I mean, Walmart's a little different than some of our other vendors. I mean, so the store manager will place the order. We call at the end of every month, the first Wednesday of every month, we do bag deliveries to all the vendors based on the orders that the managers make. And then for Walmart, we have to get a signed verification that it was received, submit that to their corporate office through an online portal. And the disputes also, dispute resolution is also done through an online portal. It's not a user-friendly process. I don't know how else to say it. And it's unfortunate. They are, they are one of our larger retailers. And that's, why we wanted to announce this. This potentially could impact a number of the residents that are using that orange bag program. And, other vendors, most of the other vendors pay on the spot when the bags are delivered. They write a check to the truck driver, delivers the bags, and that all gets brought back to the office. I think we do have 2 or 3 other vendors that we invoice, and then their accountant or corporate office sends us a check, but everybody else is timely in their payments, and we don't have this problem with them.
Do you have a list of the retailers that currently sell the orange bags on the website?
I believe it is on the website.
Okay,
Yes.
I was just going to look and
I'll-
pause, so I asked you. It's easier. It may also be useful to post something at the sites for the short term, just because people will see it if they're dropping off their
Yeah,
bags.
we can certainly do that. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
That's a good idea. Well, good luck with that.
Sorry.
Dealing with a corporate behemoth is always tricky. All right, if there are no more questions on administration's report, then we will move on to Mr. Joey Long for recycling and reuse and hazardous waste, or hazardous household waste, and the rural centers. Mr. Long.
All right, hi, thank you guys. I will start with the TerraCycle questions. So we looked through all the stuff that they offer, and they do a large range of stuff, and it's a lot of great programs, and we want to be able to offer a lot of that. We picked the 2 that we thought would benefit the most people, and that is free to us right now to start with. We do plan on expanding eventually. We're just trying to grow the program slowly. That way we do it the right way and see what we can do. And it's, makes the most sense for the customers. But they do, they offer so much. They take ketchup packets. They take everything. But it's all got to be separated and handled the right way. The recycling and reuse, the main recycling center is operating as normal. Nothing real exciting going on right now. Just everybody's doing a great job bringing in the recycling and keeping everything caught up. The materials for the arts, we are collecting school supplies for teachers. Currently this week, I want to say thank you to Mary Hunter, the supervisor of the materials for the arts. She has met with over 21 new people that's never been there before, new teachers, new volunteers. I've met with them, so it's been a busy week as far as that goes. So we are definitely going to be seeing a lot more people in the future. The hazardous materials, it's operating as normal right now. Normal stuff, nothing exciting either. The rural recycling sites, we did get the parking lots graded, so hopefully vehicles going in and out should be smoother. We do have plans to do a little bit more work to them as time permits and weather. With the rain, there was only so much we could get done, but we do plan on doing a little bit more work. And that's all I have. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Long. Are there any questions on this report? I'm definitely going to try to find that list of items for TerraCycle and start putting aside some things. That's pretty exciting.
Yeah, we got to visit a place in Cincinnati, Ohio that takes about everything and sends to them, and it was eye-opening. So we need to start offering more. We just have to grow it the right way.
Yeah, so Mr. McGlasson, if that could get put on the website, I think that would be really helpful. I can go back on the, what did you say, Facebook or Instagram or?
The Twitter. Or
Twitter.
X.
X. X. All right. Well, I don't usually log into that, but I might make an exception.
But yeah, we can certainly work with the website host and get that list put up there.
Okay, great, great. All right, so if there are no questions, we can move on to the next report, which would be from Mr. Lee Paulson about landfill and environmental compliance.
Good afternoon, Lee Paulson, landfill and environmental compliance. The report kind of speaks for itself. The only thing I would highlight with that is that we got the groundwater statistics back from our new company, Atlas, and I actually got that all finished up today and submitted to IDEM for that. No real changes with anything that's going on out there. Everything has been pretty routine with those samples and results. The only other thing I would kind of highlight, just that our adopter road numbers were down for July. We had none. But I think a lot of that was due to right at the beginning of the month, there was all those crazy storms. A lot of people weren't really volunteering. They were taking care of their own properties, and just we went from crazy rain to crazy cleanups. So I don't really take that as anything to be concerned about. Mary Beth has been working, and I'm going to a student function at the end of August to try to recruit some students looking to be involved in their college students looking to be involved in their communities. So I'm trying to promote that program at that event. And we're just kind of hoping that people are done with their vacations and we can get people get back to what they were doing before their vacations and that kind of stuff. So, but other than that, if you guys have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Thank you, Mr. Paulson. Are there any questions about the report from landfill and environmental compliance? All right, seeing none. We can.
Ms. Piedmont Smith?
Yes.
I'm sorry, two follow-ups if I could.
Of course.
I guess adding on to Mr. Polson's with regard to the groundwater statistical analysis report, I do want to publicly extend a big thank you to the geologist from AECOM that we worked with, John Bassett. He has been more than open and cooperative with us and with Atlas, our new provider, and helping them learn some of the history and some of the I guess the comments and the descriptions of what's going on in the groundwater at the landfill that he over the years has been giving the item, particularly with regard to elevated arsenic levels, both up gradient and down gradient, of the landfill. So he's been instrumental in making that transition a very smooth process with the new company. And then also following up, adding to my report, I did miss that as we are starting the new school year here, Ms. Pokral is finalizing her curriculum for the year, and she will be reaching out to the local school systems and the teachers. But she has programs for K through 12, and any teachers or other representative school systems that are listening or watching from RBB, MCCSC, or any of the local charter or private schools, more than welcome to reach out to Ms. Procral about those programs for this coming school year.
All right, thank you for those updates. I think the next part of the agenda is just open public comment. So is there anybody in the public who would like to give comments on any items related to the Waste Reduction District? All right, seeing none, we can come back to the Board of Directors. Are there any comments from board members? Yes, Commissioner Givens.
2 weeks ago, I was at two public meetings about the convention center expansion and talking with the designers and the architects. And people that were there asked that there be facilities for not only recycling, but I also asked if they could look into composting at the facility. And that was very nicely received by folks.
Yes, that would be terrific. Any other comments from directors? All right. Mr. McGlasson, anything else for the good of the order?
No, ma'am.
All right, we can adjourn. Thank you.